What's that?
Jasper's right. Jasper. Okay.
Yeah. Got it. Good.
I had to stop second guessing myself.
You're fine. Hello, everybody. Welcome to tonight's reading. PNCA's low residency creative writing program.
Okay, yeah.
Our faculty reading.
I had to stop second guessing myself.
We have one more faculty. Hello, everybody. Welcome to tonight's reading. PNCA's low residency creative writing program. Sorry about that. Let's try that again. Welcome to PNCA's low residency creative writing faculty reading. We will have one more reading on July 1st with LaTanya McQueen and our guest artist Kaiming Chang, which will be streaming and also will be at the Independent Publishing Resource Center. For tonight, I'm going to hand it over to Kia Rogers, who will do our introductions.
Good evening, everyone. All right. So first we have Jess Arndt. So Jess Arndt is the author of Large Animals Stories. Arndt received her MFA at Bard and was a 2013 Grey Wolf SLS Fellow and 2010 Fiction Fellow at the New York Foundation of the Arts. She has written for Fence, Bomb, Offgabe, and the art journal Parquet, sorry, among others. She is a co-founder of New Herring Press and lives in Moscow, Iowa, where she teaches at the University of Idaho. In Moscow, Idaho.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So awesome to be here with you guys. I've been looking forward to this all week. And so I thought I would do a little bit of a tiny split reading. I have a story from Large Animals that I thought about reading today because it was inspired by a painting of a friend who asked a bunch of us to write about her paintings. And I got to see her today in the park for the first time in many years. And that was really wonderful. And she had done this series of like these kind of headshots. And some of them looked like the head was made of wood. And so during that time, I was thinking like, what would it be like to have your head made of wood? And also there's a kind of part in the story about a really funky smell of linden flowers. And I just happened to hit it here in New York where the linden smell is really strong again. So it was making me think of that story. Anyway, so I want to put it to you guys. Do you want to hear the story about a wooden face first and some kind of like shame around it? Or do you want to hear a guilty letter about pedagogy that's coming out in a journal called Migrating Pedagogies that Gabrielle Seville, a dear friend at CalArts, is putting out. Guilty letter, okay. Let's start with the guilty letter about pedagogy, and then we'll end with a story about wooden faces. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. So the letter's kind of, the way it's going to be published is in this kind of email format. So I'll sort of try to represent it. From Gabrielle Seville, Jan 18, 2022, 11:51 a.m. Protuberance, Porosity, and Permafrost, which was the title of the talk that I was going to transcribe. And it goes, Jess, I hope all is well in 2022. We are excited to share that we have a publishing schedule for Migrating Pedagogies. And then this is in bold. Are you able to send your revised draft by March 3rd? Let me know what might work for you and if you still have the capacity for the project. We love your approaches to thinking about pedagogy and community and look forward to your piece. We also understand the wildness of this moment. Hugs, thanks, and more soon. XO, Gab, BBBBBB. Okay. I was way behind on this. And so this response, and that came January 18th, this response comes March 4th. And if you remember, it says, are you able to send your revised draft by March 3rd? So this comes at March 4th, 2022 at 12:06 a.m. Protuberance, Porosity, and Permafrost. Okay, real talk. I know you genius eds meet tomorrow. Since we last spoke about this piece, I feel like I've been thinking about this nonstop through a massive dose of teaching and experimenting. I've taught 2 more rounds of body fiction, doubled down. I've taught a weird grad workshop, work on, we were calling it. I called non-binary fictions. I'm teaching a nonfiction class where we made up a form called the somatic essay and then wrote it. And I'm currently co-teaching with grad students our class we've named Fiction Text, a shortening of the traditional techniques. Text from the Indo-Euro root to weave, to fabricate, especially with an axe. Also to make wicker or wattle fabric from mud-covered house walls. All this talking about making, but I deliquesce, which is that a feeling or a word? Basically, I haven't written in a year, and I totally hugely understand if my goodwill contract with you beautiful shimmering powerhouses has reached its limit. Liquefaction, decomposition, in parentheses, something that happens to mushrooms and now glaciers, in parentheses, seems imminent. Or is it Cambridge Dictionary, to gradually disappear, become destroyed? But with every winter bloated fiber, I would love to finish the debt to self, you, with you. Since we last talked about the piece, I also feel like my references have shifted, or maybe I've found more quote unquote meat. I've been teaching Bloodchild like crazy and keep thinking about OB's feelings about botflies. I've been deeply into Wayne Kostenbaum's Plato Fun Factory poetics. And then this is his quote, my poetics, anal, elementary, abstract, resembles a Plato Fun Factory. Language as the filter, the shape through which, this is his quote, through which Plato would be forced, extruded, end quote. I've fallen in love with Brian Evanson's leg and its a sloshness. Last night, I was reading Renee Gladman's Calamities and what it means to hold sentences in your mouth. And then this is in parentheses, the Lori Weeks mouth vibe still feels strong, especially as she's from Moscow, Idaho, the place where I've bizarrely landed, end parentheses. Plus, Isha Sabatini Sloan put out Borealis, and how can I talk about the Arctic now without dropping that? Then there's Leonora Carrington's Debutante with her weird hyena mask, or hyena in maidskin mask, hyena who is the ultimate body transgressor. Oh, and not to mention Megan Milks's Slug and Other Stories, maybe the most body transforming thing I've ever read. And Tom Cho, have you guys read this? Look Who's Morphine? The story Dirty Dancing is just so incredible. Bacteria and fungus becoming connective second, third selves, justifying raunchy gay sex at summer camp that even Auntie Fang can get behind. In parentheses, I finally realized only now, today, that protuberant is the thing touching me, touching you. And parentheses. And then for porousness, there's Ocean Vuong talking about the eyeball and getting so low in the bathhouse steam. And Kevin Killian, in quotes, and this is his language, I'm standing on a flat plane and then, or so it seems, a little hole appears in the sand ahead of me, like that movie Tremors. The hole grows larger in diameter. This is my sanity, and all the little pieces of my sanity are breaking up and slipping down into the hole. That's what it feels like. I'm trying to write this piece Poison about the ways in which the writer's personality dissolves as it weaves in and out of the sentences he or she so painfully struggles to produce, end quote. Plus there's Rabelais, who's still around. He got hot. And then there's an image, which can't be in the actual letter. This is from the 1700s, like a plate I found of Rabelais. And so I describe it. Book plate from the 1700s, Lotharic grin, 5 o'clock shadow, like he's a year into tea. Plus, is he wearing braces? And is that somehow hotter? His sailor jacket swelling at the bosom. And then this is his language, a groin like a mince pie, etc. You get it, smoldering. Basically, I want this piece to be more doing than saying, more fun. Protuberance, porosity, and permafrost, which was my original title, as inverse gerunds, doing it, verbing themselves around. My old piece was a job talk for jobs I didn't get. It's formal in ways I would never want to be then or now. And it was thinking pedagogy from a distance. And since I hadn't been in a classroom for 3 years and had instead been mixing mezcal in huge white paint buckets or hiding from the pandemic on an island fighting loggers. The generating question of this whole thing was, can language ever really be the thing? Is 3D language possible? If so, what would it be like? Herbieto Yepes saying, in quotes, when I write character, it must, to me, feel as if composed of bubble gum. A character is not a stable thing, a plasma. Characters should always melt, end quote. And Douglas Kearney saying mess and mess and, which I only know because of you, Gabrielle, and your transcendent, ecstatically provoking and doubling deja vu, in parentheses. In the meantime, in the classroom, we've stumbled a lot. I said to everyone who was earnestly assembling themselves, I didn't care about genre. I told everyone to go out into the world, to their own private wolf-killing Idaho, and press themselves to things. Most of them have done it along the way. Some have gotten pretty briefly, we're still not sure, mad. I assigned too much reading. It didn't follow up always. I said we had to workshop, but call it something else. So far, we've tried a workout, a work on, walking the dog, walking the cat, a catwalk, the big sad. Plus, almost all my readings had barf and puke in them, or someone was always inopportunely taking a shit. C.A. Conrad swallowed a crystal to commune with their murdered lover, then explained that they can't write or couldn't write in the present because factories and the generations of factory work meant death. Last night at the 50 millionth best Zoom reading, I asked Isha SS about touching the glacier while in Homer, Alaska, and she said perfectly, she never did. What is it about us and glaciers, our shared water content, how we're always measuring ourselves near their mammothnesss, breathing on them, close but apart? And by the way, did you know that you can't bury anyone in the northernmost regions because permafrost pushes bodies to the surface and out? Also, no cats. Lutia gave me a scroll for our 5th anniversary of marrying 2 days before Trump got elected, would make it so I couldn't adopt Osa. The scroll was tied in an electric purple yarn, electric like Prince. Inside was The Carrier Bag Theory of Fiction by Ursula K. Le Guin. Carrier bag, which she calls in quotes, a leaf, a gourd, a shell, a net, a bag, a sling, a sack, a bottle, a pot, a box, a container, a recipient, a place you can live in. A book holds words, words hold things. The protuberant word, that was the end of her, and this is me now. The protuberant word, sentence, gesture is as much a recipient as it is actor. Its shape does something. What's held made by this? In my job talk, I showed a slide of me butch slumping in a homemade walrus costume. Butch slump is a shape, that's a word, that's a wound, that's a vessel. It encloses, strains, incubates, unfurls, cocoons. Thinking here always of Legia Clark and her The I and the You feeling suit from 1967 that looks like a deep sea diver with connective crotch tubes. Reading now a student's thesis full of perfect poem as nugget forms and another student's poems that move like those fire snakes emitting black ash via intumescent reaction, i.e. swelling up when heated. Looking down at the leftover ash, it's arc or new tunnel, both. New question. What form is endogenous to you? Here's a glacier site we visited while in Svalbard, and this is supposed to be an image of a trip I took in the Arctic that I've been writing about for the talk. It's a slab of ice around a giant in-poking hole. It looks so dark and forebodingly concave, like something about to be turned inside out. At 78 degrees north, does protuberant equal porous equal permafrost, a PPP pit? To close, I guess I'm asking for just a little tiny bit more time, trust and time, which you've given out so gargantua and Pantagruel style generously. A few more days, whatever feels like it wouldn't further disservice your project and integrity of feeling. If we're at the end, I also understand. The idea of this piece has been a lantern during this weird, physically extreme time, and I'm grateful. Whatever you decide, exclamation point. Yours, maximally, Jess. Okay, so that's the guilt letter. Thank you. Jay, do I have time to read a little story, or should we close it there? Okay.
You have time.
Okay. Yeah. So here's a short little story. Again, inspired by my friend's paintings. These faces that look like they were kind of staring through wood. And at the time I wrote the story, I had just been in Berlin, so I was sort of thinking about that vibe. It's called Le Gueule de Bois. In the city whose sole monument is a comically upturned syringe and whose light is not like gauze, but is, it was as if I'd borrowed all my language from an obsolete guidebook. I kept saying things like, I understand only station, My dear Mr. Singing Club, I have pig. And most often, for no reason that was clear to me, stay on the carpet. Still, these expressions allowed my transit, and the strangers whom I was always meeting seemed to accept them with good humor. Actually, they completely ignored my lingual botch jobs. I was sure they knew I was talking nonsense, but since they stubbornly refused to admit it, I was left alone in a strange cloud of non-meaning that smelled, of all things, like linden trees. For the last week, everywhere had smelled like linden trees. The blossomy funk was inside the clubs where I've been hiding out, traveling all the way down to the pervasive, always popular dark rooms, and back up along the river, clinging to my skin and to each particle of wet air. It was summer now, the trees were telling me. Did I care? I was interested only in all-night parties. But this morning, something was wrong. I flopped up from my mattress and crawled to the nearby mirror. My hands were pale screens. My hair had remnants of old fruit in it from some bacchanalia or another. Oh no, I moaned, looking. I'd woken up with the wooden face. I regarded the mirror again. There was no getting around it. A flat, broad block, it must have been 5 inches deep, a foot wide, a foot high, was my only expression. To make it worse, there was no grain in the wood at all. It was only thick and smooth and hard and hot. But what had I been doing with my face? My heart was racing, only my memory, like my face, was entirely blank. I did my best to get dressed. My t-shirt neck refused to stretch over the wood slab. I sat at the bare window, completely unformed, squeezing a glass of water. Below, near the falafel shop, squat dogs sped turds onto the ground. Does it go on like this? I thought, on and on forever. It was hard to tell the hour. Here, the sun was a flea jumping out of the night's thin batter. It never stayed down for long. All over the tiny apartment that I rented weekly, beer and wine bottles, empty, hunched. I believed they'd accumulated over time, but then again, was it possible there'd been a party? Luckily, I discovered a metal box on my corner whose symbols led me to believe it was a recycling bin. Simple enough, open the slot and toss your bottle down the hole. I shoveled myself into a duffel coat and picked up the nearest glass armful. See, I could still participate, be useful. I stepped onto the 3rd floor landing. Near the banister, an old stove nestled as if vagrant, it too removed from its home. Suddenly, I was pushing my foot against it. And that's for loving me, I said, bashing away. And that's for not. Behind me, the door to my flat lunged closed, locking me out. Never mind, I insisted. I pounded on the stairs and kept on doggedly out onto the street. I could quickly tell it wasn't morning, but here it never is. Here morning is like an unkempt relative we never visit. Sure, they want us to, but who likes visiting? At the corner, I opened the slot and tossed in the first bottle. As it passed my fingers, I saw its label, cryptic, a variety I'd never heard of, let alone bought. If I had been drinking that, well, anxiously, I leaned forward and then farther forward and even farther down. My wood face was almost inside the chamber. My oxygen was constricting. I wanted more than anything to hear the gorgeous bell of that mysterious wine tanker smash. Yet there was no sound. I shifted my load. Something about that endless chasm reminded me that maybe I was mistranslating my predicament. What did I know about here and there, definitions, attaching things together? Le gueule de bois, the wooden face, the stiff plank I now wore on my neck. Could it also mean a face of woods? That seemed freer. Thinking along those lines, I began to breathe again in short, quick bursts, feeling a certain soft bark grow over my cheeks and the possibility of one teenage mousseline, obviously a symbol of self-worth, stepping knock-kneed between my many trunks. I took another breath. When I arrived in this strange city from New York and set up camp in a minuscule bottle-polluted flat overlooking the canal, I'd been fixated on one thing only, to avoid pain at all costs. Was this that? Now I glanced in King Falafel's window with fresh hope. Be gone. But between the cone of shaved meat and my reflection, the plank persisted. A big chunk of hardwood clamped onto my shoulders, and underneath it, the rest of my body, Gumby-like by comparison, barely there. Just then, a man passed me beneath the lindens, a man I may have recognized. I set down the bottles, smoothing my jacket. Hey, was it you? I called out. I was sure that with this added obstruction, I was speaking only more gobbledygook and that he would continue on. Instead, he stopped. I leaned my weight against the metal box that held the bottomless hole. Yes, it's me, he said. Me. And who was that? His eyes were small oceans, and the skin around them was fiery red. As you can see, I have the wooden face, I said. I touched the surface, wrapping my knuckles to demonstrate. He paused thoughtfully, and as he did, he turned sideways. Meeting his lake tan neck, I was struck with a squall of recognition. How could I forget that last night he and I had been in that bullion pot of a swimming pool, itself housed in a makeshift club? That between the synth beats, he'd grabbed my ankle and laughed. We're all so happy, he'd said, as urine ran down my legs. We're all so happy. We're peeing in the pool. The memory swam up from the chlorine abyss, and I felt something tugging beneath it. The peeing had only been at the night's start. There's nothing wrong with your face, he said, interrupting my memory's possible rebound. Albeit you look a little puffy from this party you had. Gold light clung peach-like to the swarming clouds. This was the clearest conversation I'd had in months. I wished I were anywhere else, walking along the canal. I shifted my feet and my toe clotted into a bottle that fell, bursting. I'm not here by accident, he continued. I left my cat in your apartment and I'm here to pick it up. But now I was adamant. I could feel my chin bobbling or trying to through the uniform block. My face, I said. It was impossible to me that he could not see it. I was sure suddenly, with absolute certainty, that this wooden face is what I had been searching for all along. That it was the necessary scaffolding for my mush-like feelings that would not recede, even here an entire Atlantic away, but kept always slopping forth. Chi-Chi, he said, my cat. I scanned backward. Impossible, a cat? And I was locked out of my flat anyway. At last I had found a boundary and could be firm. But he hauled closer to me still, brushing goose flesh onto my arm. And as he did, my stomach gouged. And I felt us skirting around that club through the high-pitched, pitch-black park, pausing under a linden tree whose low-hanging buds, his fingers on my sodden thigh, my lips troughing out sideways, the megacosm shearing past us at mock speed and spunk-like green linden smell of yeast and caving in, of being fucked all the way up the middle. A river the color of currywurst that I kept. I wanted to be another person. Come with me, he said, trying to gather me toward King Falafel, at least a beer. But my head had begun to throb and my vision swirl. There were grains now, too many of them to count, as if I were looking through tissue. Around us, it was growing dark. I saw that out on the street, in clumps or pairs, many others were having this same conversation. A beer? A beer. A beer? Yeah, a beer. I knew then that I would have to travel home. That's it. Thanks, guys.
All right, and next we have Alison C. Rollins. So Alison C. Rollins, born and raised in St. Louis City, is a 2019 National Endowment for the Arts Literature Fellow. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming in American Poetry Review, Iowa Review, New England Review, the New York Times Magazine, and elsewhere. A Cave Canem and Callaloo Fellow, she is a 2016 recipient of the Poetry Foundation's Ruth Lilly and Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Fellowship. In 2018, she was the recipient of a Rona Jaffe Writers Award, and in 2020, the winner of the Pushcart Prize. She holds a Master's of Library and Information Science from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and has held faculty as well as librarian appointments at various institutions, including the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and Colorado College. Her debut poetry collection, Library of Small Catastrophes, was a 2020 Hurston Wright Foundation Legacy Award nominee.
Yay, thank you so much for that introduction. It's so great to see Jess again virtually and read alongside you. I don't think I've ever smelled linden trees to my knowledge, but that's now on the list of things to do. I'm gonna need to share screen, but while maybe we get that set up, it's become now kind of a tradition for me to read works in progress that I have little knowledge maybe of where they're going to go, or they're very much not finished or complete. And so in that capacity, I'm going to read for you all tonight some excerpts from a manuscript I'm working on called How to Be a Horsewife. And this was born this past spring in relationship to the fact that next month I will be getting married for the second time to a cis man. And my own kind of guilt, shame, ambivalence, complexity surrounding a fear of the erasure of my queerness, certain issues surrounding, as I talked about this morning, I've been doing metal work all semester. So working in the steel yard, being covered in dirt and soot. I actually injured my ring fingernail. I like indented it with a piece of steel. So kind of my cuticles were fucked up, like just getting rough all semester. And then feeling this pressure or need to perform some notion of femininity, particularly for my family, or to perform some notion of wedding ritual that suggests all of these things to people that I love, but people that often don't have an understanding of the fullness or complexity of my desire, my relationship to chosen family, how I'd like to build this marriage or relationship differently. And so in conversation and collaboration with a classmate and friend of mine at Brown, we created this kind of persona of the housewife. We're just trying to be out here being housewives. And regardless of chosen family and friends I have, their gender possibility or even gender fluidity or gender nonconformity, the housewife still reigns as this type of emblematic quality. Like, we just want to make art and be kept with, just take care of, someone takes care of us and supports the art that we make. And I was thinking about that in relationship to race, socioeconomic status, sexuality, and the bestial nature, I think, that a lot of Blackness is culturally forced to reside within. So I created and made these masks, which unfortunately they're in Providence, so I can't wear one tonight. But as a workaround, I'm going to take excerpts from the manuscript. Many of them are kind of hybrid mixed media. And so read and do it in a slideshow type capacity. So you'll see a variety of sourced images, ranging from film to visual art, painting, some visual poetics that I've created with found imagery or diagrams, and we'll see how it goes. Okay. All right, this is excerpts from How to Be a Horsewife. Parental advisory. Oh, no, girl. No. Okay, hold on. Okay, hold on. Wait 1 second. I don't think I want to do slideshow then. Let's see. Okay, sometimes PDFs don't want you to be great, but we're going to make it work. Okay. Excerpts from How to Be a Horsewife. Parental advisory, explicit content. A horsewife requires you to look back at it. To start from behind, you must begin at the rear. How to Be a Good Horsewife, an illustrated instruction manual. Author photograph. Dear wife, you are, dear horse, are you what's missing in my life house? A life is a type of light. Spotlight, doe, ray, me, homecoming when the wind done gone. Chart 1. 1, inflamed eyes or neuralgia. 2, 3, 4 may be due to trauma, frontal headaches. 5, diseased teeth, neuralgia. 6, diseased teeth, neuralgia, mumps. 7, tonsillitis, inflamed glands. 8, angina pectoris. 9, pregnancy, ovarian disease, hysteria, neuralgia, abscess, cyst or cancer of the breast. 10, impacted splenic colon, colitis, stomach ulcer or cancer, enlarged spleen, acute rheumatism. 11, stomach. 12, kidney and gallbladder. 13, stomach, ulcer, cancer of heteropatriarchy. 14, seat of pain, reflected from the appendix, appendicitis. 15, uterus or womb. 16, cystitis, neuralgia, ulcer, uterine or ovarian disease, inflammation, menstrual pains. 17, ovary inflammation or neuralgia. 18, ovarian foal. 19, ovarian or uterine disease, displaced uterus, psoriasis abscess. 20, rheumatism, periostitis, bone tuberculosis, locomotor ataxia. 21, rheumatism, sprain at ankle. The shaded portions in this chart indicate the location of the pain, and the numbers refer in the text to the source of the trouble. This is not an anatomical chart and does not show the location of the horse. Courting is a casting call. You are assigned a number. A husband, a director, tells you where to stand. He takes liberties with your character. You hear an agenda in his voice, a rolled up scroll of action items. Judging by the pieces of tape on the floor, you know where you are meant to be. Chart 2, disproportionate example of unreal beauty. Caught in the act, I am on fire. The brick house burnt down. Opening night is still a work in progress. My body, a staged performance. You, the audience, standing room only. Antlered whispers, waiting room music, a popcorn ceiling, little cups of water, a hoarse voice and cough drops. Under pre-existing conditions, I state, domesticated, kept, woman, Black, beauty, queer, mare. All eyes on me, headless horse. Most young wives get their heads cut off. With my rutabaga legs, I am running from, no, I am running for mayor of nowhere. No man's land is a house of representatives. I wear a dress with the sales tag still attached. I need my money back in order to return to a previous version of myself. Insinuating gestures, scene 3 offers just one of many interpretations. It feels silly to rattle rhyme with rhetoric. It feels strange as the monkey wrench thrown from the back of the Playhouse Theater. Tricks are for ponies. To become a wife is to both fear for and be afraid of a horse. A masquerade ball full of grass and hay. I change ponytails like hair wigs, two-faced. Not sorry to bother you with horse drag. Never underestimate the power of a morph. I've simmered the meat of the tongue and cheek in the residue of legalities, the only lashes I've ever seen extend from my own eyelids. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it come home, alive, alone. I know what it means to be in touch but out of reach, hung like a face, cut from the cake of despair. To make a better home requires a better garden. A better garden demands you plant the seed for your offspring by winter's end, in hopes the apple will not fall on a hard head, crawl on the bruised lawn of wormy flesh, rest in the shade of someone else's family tree, be private property. Black beauty finds a home. Grotesque creature comforts, wet nostrils, spittle, pointed ears. As a formality, I've painted my toenails horseshoe silver, braided my hair, fastened, saddled. I am respectable. I am a horse, so fly, so fresh, and so clean. Summer. Summer comes to me with an open hand, and I let her lead me by the throat. But where does summer go when she leaves my mouth, wide open like the screen door of a shotgun house? If you're hot on the trail, hang back. Hoof prints will offer evidence. To be in a stable relationship feels the same as being lonely. I turn my horsemen wild, then drive them loose. A mane is a memory of brokenness. Portrait of a horsewife. Whip smart, made from white paper, crafted from black hide, still life, unmoved, white knuckling through the day. I studied the part, I embodied the character, I cornered the market. I made myself a paper horse from taut leather, a full-speed stallion, be still my Mustang heart. Muscles bowed, sinew softened, neck tied tight to the backyard fence, barbed. A horsewife is stagnant, bent. The grass sits perfectly, upright. I sleep with a Colt 45 for protection, not for unwanted pregnancy. Hunger grows strong. I make soup from stones for my children. I read them scary stories in the dark, like Edgar Allan Poe's The Black Cat. The source of the trouble. I play make-believe. I pretend that someday, if I'm a good guy, I will have a bad boy of my own. I tend to ask myself, where do children come from? A rider on horseback is what I was told. Where are children made? In a stable, home. Black cat. Who makes children? Adults horsing around. How are children made? Horseplay. Who are children made for? Childish adults. I am a kid at heart, immature. A baby goat is called a kid. I'm just kidding. Eventually, I bore someone I had never met before. A strange stranger. Of me, but not me. A type of extension cart, attached by a cord gone haywire. In a true fantasy, a horse-like woman comes to life atop my hips. In real life, I have a bridegroom. I, his hybrid horse. What is the meaning of this? Identity politics, the 1,984 silly games animals play on a farm. I've stamped out certain desires, run them out of town with a clock made from biology. The center of rotation, we had a falling out. The center of disorientation, the angle of falling in love. Center of disorientation, the angle of falling in love. Center of disorientation, the angle of falling in love. Time out. Two galloping hands turned counterclockwise in the dark, breast astray, piggyback pink of palms, slapping some sense into my pussycat privates, rampant, mad cow disease. Blah, blah, blah. Mammals will babble on and on about how animal abuse is domestic cruelty. Old MacDonald had a hoe and various other tools. To work the virgin soil requires equipment. Vagina, rectum, base of cecum, descending duodenum, right kidney, diaphragm, esophagus, trachea, cranial lobe, heart, caudal lobe, right dorsal colon, liver, right ventral colon. A mule that carries drugs to the sick and shut-in is a saint of a woman. Muzzle, withers, back, loins, croup, hip, tail, girth, flank, thigh, hamstring, hock, belly, height, knee, pastern, hoof. To be a horsewife is to be in and of service. A true horsewife is an angel. Real horsewives, far from it. Okay, that's the end of that piece.
Wow.
Okay, do I need to read something now?
No, I didn't know.
Okay, I didn't know if that took up enough time. I'm sorry. It was
Oh,
a
it's up
little
to
bit
you.
minimalist this time. Okay.
It's up to you, Allison, whatever you feel like doing.
Okay, because I don't
We can give you a round of applause.
okay, let's rock with that. I feel like y'all have a lot of content for me today, so I'm gonna fade to black.
All right, Allison, thank you so much. That was such a great reading. Thank you. All right, y'all, our next reading is faculty reading is and guest artist is July 1st, Ming Chang and Latanya McQueen. Thanks so much.